I didn't notice her at first. Or maybe I did, but I tried not to look too long. The room was dim, the soft buzz of voices from the kitchen carrying over, but when she walked in, everything else felt muted. My friend's older sister, graceful in that way some people just are, like every step is measured, every glance intentional. She smiled at me briefly, a polite acknowledgement, and then her eyes slipped past as though she hadn't felt my chest tighten. She always carried herself like that, confident, steady, but tonight something in her presence made the air thinner. I stayed on the couch, trying to look casual, scrolling through my phone without reading a word. I wasn't expecting her to cross the room. But she did. Quiet, slow, like she'd decided it a moment too late and had to commit. When she sat down beside me, the cushion dipped, and I swear I could feel the warmth of her body before her shoulder even brushed mine. "Too loud in there?" she asked softly, tilting her head toward the kitchen. I nodded, though truthfully, I hadn't even noticed the noise until she mentioned it. My attention had narrowed to her perfume, something faint, not sweet, but warm, like wood smoke mixed with something floral. Her hand rested loosely on her lap, fingers brushing the hem of her dress. I caught myself staring and quickly looked away, but not before she noticed. She said nothing, just folded one leg over the other, the faint sound of fabric shifting between us. "You don't talk much, do you?" she said, almost teasing. I hesitated. "Depends who I'm around." "And with me?" she pressed, eyes catching mine. I opened my mouth, but words stalled. The way she looked at me wasn't mocking. It wasn't even playful. It was searching, like she wanted to know what I'd say, what I wouldn't. I swallowed and shrugged, which made her lips curve in the faintest smile. For a moment we sat in silence, the kind that stretches without breaking. Her hand shifted, brushing against the side of mine on the couch cushion, light, accidental, but neither of us moved. I told myself not to overthink it, but the longer her hand stayed, the less it felt like chance. My pulse betrayed me, quickening in my throat. "You remind me of someone," she whispered suddenly, leaning closer. Her voice was low enough that I felt it more than heard it. My skin prickled, though I didn't dare ask who. Instead, I turned, and the distance between us shrank until her breath warmed my cheek. The living room, once ordinary, now felt too small, too quiet. I caught myself holding my breath, afraid to disturb whatever this was becoming. Her eyes flicked to my lips for a fraction of a second before she looked away, pulling back slightly as though she'd stepped too far. But her hand was still there, still brushing mine. I tried to speak, but the words tangled. All that came out was, "You're not what I expected." That made her laugh, soft but unguarded, the kind of laugh that slipped through before she could stop it. She tilted her head, studying me again with something unreadable in her gaze. "What did you expect?" she asked. Before I could answer, a door creaked open down the hall. The spell cracked. She drew her hand back quickly, her posture straightening, her eyes snapping toward the sound. And in that charged, fragile second I knew I wasn't safe around her at all. The door down the hall clicked shut again, and the sound of footsteps faded. But the air between us hadn't reset. It stayed taut, stretched thin, as if what almost happened was still hanging there. She leaned back slightly, as though creating space would undo what she'd just allowed. Her hand smoothed the fabric of her dress, deliberate, careful, but her eyes flicked back to me once more, like she needed to check if I'd noticed. I had. I shifted, pretending to focus on my phone again, though my pulse was still tripping. She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're too young to sit so still," she said. It stung, though she didn't mean it cruelly. "I've been told I act older than I am," I murmured. Something crossed her face, surprise, maybe even recognition. "Older," she repeated, as if testing the word. "That can be a curse, you know." I wanted to ask why, but she didn't give me the chance. She reached for the glass of water on the coffee table, and when she leaned forward, her shoulder brushed mine again. Too lightly to be called intentional, too long to be ignored. I watched the way her hand wrapped around the glass, steady but faintly tense. You ever regret anything? I asked without thinking. She paused mid-sip. Her eyes didn't meet mine right away. When they did, there was something raw flickering there. More than I'll admit out loud, she said quietly, almost like a confession that slipped past her guard. The answer hung between us. I didn't press, though part of me wanted to. Instead, I thought about how little I knew about her life. Only scraps from my friend. Divorced a few years, no kids. Always seemed composed, self-sufficient. But in that moment, the steadiness looked like armor, not ease. And me, I wasn't much better. I'd had relationships, shallow ones that burned fast and ended quicker. Nothing steady, nothing that made me stay up at night thinking about the sound of someone's voice, the weight of a glance. Until now. I realized I was staring when she tilted her head, her lips twitching like she caught me in a secret. My ears burned, and I shifted, pretending to stretch. But then she leaned closer, close enough that her hair brushed my arm. You're quiet again, she whispered. Her breath skimmed my neck, sending a shiver I couldn't hide. I swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the floor. I just don't want to say the wrong thing. Her fingers hovered for a second, then touched lightly on my shoulder, a brief press, soft but deliberate. It was nothing anyone else would notice, but it sent a current down my spine. You already did, she said, voice low, though there was no anger in it. Only something unsteady, almost tender. Her hand slipped away, but the warmth stayed, seared into me. We sat in silence, both pretending to focus elsewhere. But in the space between our bodies, something had shifted. Neither of us said it. Neither of us had to. The quiet between us didn't last long. A burst of laughter from the kitchen cut through, followed by footsteps down the hall. We both sat straighter, instinctively guilty though nothing had really happened. Her eyes flicked to the doorway. Mine followed. The footsteps slowed, then stopped. My heart thudded hard in my chest. A knock. My friend's voice. You good in there? She cleared her throat before I could say a word. Fine, she called back, her tone light, practiced. The pause on the other side stretched too long. Then, finally, the footsteps retreated, fading back toward the kitchen. I let out the breath I'd been holding. She laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. You see the problem, she murmured. I nodded, though my throat was tight. The problem wasn't just him. It was the way my pulse jumped when her arm brushed mine, the way my eyes kept falling to her mouth no matter how many times I told myself not to. She leaned back into the couch, wineglass balanced loosely between her fingers. You're too young for this, she whispered, almost to herself. I'm not a kid, I said quickly. Too quickly. Her eyes found mine. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. Instead, she leaned in, closer than before, her hair brushing my shoulder as she set the glass down on the table. My chest tightened. You don't know what people would say, she said, her voice low, steady, though her hand trembled slightly as she drew it back. Maybe I don't care, I said before I could stop myself. Her breath caught. I saw it, the way her lips parted then pressed shut again. A silence followed, sharp, charged, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She lifted her hand, hesitated, then let her fingers trail lightly along my arm. Not a full touch, not enough to claim anything, just enough to set my skin on fire. Don't, she whispered. But her hand lingered. I turned toward her. Too close now. I could feel her breath, warm and uneven against my cheek. Her eyes flicked down once, then snapped back to mine, wide, uncertain. I leaned in a fraction before stopping, frozen at the edge of something we both knew we shouldn't cross. You should, she began, but the words tangled. The silence that followed was unbearable. My hand twitched, wanting to reach for hers, but I gripped the cushion instead. She looked at me like she was about to say no. But she didn't move away. Her knee brushed mine. Her shoulder leaned against me, almost by accident, almost not. And when I didn't shift back, she let it stay. We sat there, so close the rest of the world felt shut out, both of us breathing carefully as though one wrong move would shatter everything. And still, either of us pulled away. The house had gone still. The laughter, the voices, the footsteps, gone. Just us, sitting too close in a living room that suddenly felt too small. She leaned against the couch cushion, one hand pressed lightly against her temple, as if she could rub away the weight of the night. But her knee was still against mine, warm through the thin fabric of my jeans. I didn't move. Neither did she. Finally, she broke the silence. "You don't understand how dangerous this is." Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her, restless, darting to my lips, then away again. I swallowed. "Maybe I do." That made her laugh, a breathy sound that cracked at the edges. "You think because you're bold, because you're—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "You have no idea what this would mean for me." "For you?" I asked quietly. "What about me?" Her gaze snapped to mine, sharp, startled. For a moment, she didn't look away. And then, something shifted. She reached up, hesitant at first, and brushed her fingers along my jaw, stopping just shy of my skin. My breath caught. Her hand trembled, then finally made contact, a feather-light touch tracing the stubble along my cheek. "You're too young," she whispered. But it sounded like she was trying to convince herself, not me. I tilted my head slightly, leaning into her touch. "And you can't stop looking at me." Her eyes softened, vulnerable, unguarded. Then she pulled her hand back like she'd touched fire. "Don't," she said, her voice barely there. But I'd already seen too much. I shifted closer, slow enough that she could have stopped me. My shoulder brushed hers. My thigh pressed against her knee. The warmth of her body seeped into mine until I couldn't pretend anymore. She exhaled shakily, almost a shiver. This can't." "Then tell me to go," I said. My voice was low, rougher than I meant it to be. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her eyes flicked to my mouth again. Longer this time. The world outside seemed to vanish. No sounds, no movement, just the two of us suspended in this fragile, reckless moment. I lifted a hand slowly, almost afraid to break the spell, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. My fingers grazed her cheek, lingered there longer than they should. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Her eyes fluttered shut for half a second before opening again, wide, caught between fear and surrender. "Don't do this," she whispered, but her voice cracked. "Then stop me." I breathed against her ear. The silence that followed was unbearable. Every nerve in my body pulled me forward, closer, into the gravity of her. And then a floorboard creaked in the hallway. Both of us froze, still inches apart, our breaths mingling, our hands caught halfway to something that couldn't be undone. The creak in the hallway died away, followed by a door clicking shut. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours, her hands slipping from mine, her body pulling back just enough to break the spell. But the air wasn't reset. It was thicker now, heavier. She stood, smoothing her dress, her movements too precise, too rehearsed. "We can't, not here. Not like this." I stayed seated, watching her. My chest felt tight. "Then where?" I asked before I could stop myself. She turned sharply, her eyes flashing, fear, anger, something else tangled beneath. "You don't understand what's at risk. You think this is just about us." I rose to my feet, closing some of the distance she'd created. "Then explain it. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't." She cut me off, her voice low and trembling. "Your friend knows." The words hit me harder than I expected. "What?" Her jaw tightened. "He's not as clueless as you think. He saw the way you look at me. And tonight, when he asked if everything was fine, he lingered. He knows something." I felt my pulse in my throat. Shame, panic, and something darker knotted together. My first instinct was denial. "Then we should be careful. More careful." But her hands betrayed her. She was wringing them together, knuckles white, like the truth of it scared her more than she wanted to admit. "He'll hate me," she whispered. "And you." She faltered, her voice catching. You'll lose him. I stepped closer until I could feel the heat radiating from her, though she kept her gaze fixed somewhere near the floor. You think I care more about him than this? Her eyes finally snapped up to mine, wide, unguarded. Don't say that, she whispered. Don't make me believe it. The room pulsed with silence. My hand twitched at my side, aching to touch her, to steady the trembling she was trying so hard to hide. She shifted, brushing past me as if to escape, but the movement pressed her hip against mine, and neither of us pulled away immediately. Her breath hitched. She froze mid-step, caught between retreat and surrender. You should hate me for this, she said, her voice breaking. I don't, I answered, too fast, too raw. Her eyes shone with something I couldn't name. Fear, yes. But also longing, sharp and unrelenting. We stood there, bodies almost touching, silence thick enough to choke on. The revelation had changed everything. What was once a secret thrill now carried weight, risk, inevitability. Finally, she whispered, almost pleading. If you stay, if we do this, there's no undoing it. I reached out, fingers grazing hers, slow, deliberate. She didn't move. I already decided, I said. Her hand trembled in mine, but she didn't pull away. The house had fallen silent again, but inside me, everything was loud, heartbeat, breath, the hum of thoughts I couldn't quiet. She was standing so close now, her hand still caught in mine, trembling but unbroken. Her eyes searched mine, frantic, as though waiting for me to blink, to pull away, to free her from the decision she was afraid to make. I didn't. Tell me to stop, I whispered. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her shoulders sagged like she'd been carrying the weight too long. You don't know what this means, she said finally, her voice barely audible. Then show me, I murmured. The air between us thickened. She swayed forward slightly, not enough to close the distance, but enough for me to feel her warmth brush against me. Her perfume rose again, faint, smoky, floral, and I leaned in, helpless. Her hand slid from mine, only to rest on my chest, the lightest pressure, but it pinned me more firmly than anything else could have. Her palm flattened against my heartbeat, as if to test if I felt what she did. I can't, she began, but the word cracked, dissolved. I reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My knuckles grazed her cheek, lingering there, memorizing the softness. She shivered, not from cold, but from being touched where she hadn't let herself be in too long. You can't, I whispered. She closed her eyes, just for a second. When she opened them, all the restraint she'd been clinging to was gone. Her face tipped toward mine, slow, hesitant, but unstoppable. My breath caught, every nerve on fire. Inches. Just inches. Then, her forehead rested against mine. Not lips, not yet. Just the weight of her leaning into me, fragile and fierce all at once. You'll regret this, she whispered, though the words carried no conviction. I shook my head against her. The only thing I'd regret is walking away. Her hand fisted lightly in my shirt, pulling me closer. My nose brushed hers. Our lips hovered, a heartbeat away. The choice hung between us, risk everything, or end it now. And then she chose. Her mouth met mine, not soft, not cautious, but urgent, hungry, like the dam had finally burst. My hands cupped her face, her skin warm under my palms as she pressed into me, no more hesitation. The world outside didn't matter anymore. Not my friend, not the house, not the rules we'd both broken. Only her. Only this. When she finally pulled back, breathless, her eyes stayed locked on mine. This doesn't go back to normal, she whispered. I nodded, my chest heaving. I don't want normal. Her lips parted again, but this time there was no resistance. No denial. Just the raw truth hanging between us. We understood each other now, fully, dangerously, irrevocably. The kiss had left the room different, as though even the walls were holding their breath. She pulled back slowly, her eyes searching mine, like she was expecting me to realize what I'd done and run. I didn't. Instead, I leaned my forehead to hers, closing the small space she'd left. Her breath was uneven, warm against my lips. For once, neither of us was pretending anymore. "I shouldn't have let that happen," she whispered, though her hands stayed clenched in my shirt. I smiled faintly. "You say that like it wasn't both of us." Her laugh was quiet, shaky. Not polished, not controlled, the sound of her guards slipping. She shook her head, but she didn't move away. The silence after was softer than before, less sharp. We stayed close, her hands sliding down my chest until our fingers found each other. She didn't lace them fully, not at first. Just touched, testing, tentative. Then finally, she let her hands sink into mine, our palms pressed together. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely there. "Me too," I said. It was the first time either of us had said it so plainly. Strangely, that made it easier. She leaned into me then, resting her head against my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her, slow, uncertain, but when she let out a long breath and settled against me, it felt like permission. For a long moment, we didn't speak. The quiet wrapped around us, warm now instead of heavy. Her perfume clung faintly to my shirt, and I closed my eyes, memorizing the weight of her there, the way her hand fit in mine like it belonged. Finally she said, "It won't be simple." I nodded. "Good things never are." She tilted her head back to look at me, her eyes soft, searching. And this time, instead of fear, I saw something else there, acceptance, maybe even a quiet kind of hope. Her fingers brushed my jaw, tracing lightly as though to reassure herself I was still here. Then she pressed a soft kiss to my forehead, gentler than the first, but no less binding. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't fireworks. But it was real. And sitting there, holding her close, I knew it was enough. We stayed like that, quiet, warm, leaning into each other, as if we'd both finally stopped running. Whatever came next, it would be ours to face. Together. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?